All right, good afternoon. We are in the Flying Oaks Ranch in Caw City, Oklahoma. It belongs to Rick Schatz. He breeds and raises Mangalarga marchadors from Brazil. And we have 7 stallions here that we're going to work on. They range from age 2 to 4. They're all pasture bred, so they haven't been handled. And what we're going to work on is just getting them introduced to the halter and see if we can get them to start to lead and so forth. So we've got 2 of them in here right now. We're going to see if I can move one of them into the round pen, and we'll get started with them. Attaboy. Attaboy. Okay, now I had this one in a few days ago and just getting started on the relationship part of this. And what we want to do with them first off is the goal is in this particular time is not to get the halter on him, but to get him comfortable with following. Now these guys, some of them, and this one is one of them, that's pretty insecure, and so I want to be careful not to push them very hard in here, because out that direction are about 8 or 10 mares, and he's easily distracted. So we'll see what he recalls from his first lesson a few days ago, and at that point we couldn't really get him to approach. So what I'm doing here is just circle the horse, and if he just should decide to walk off, and I would just send him off. But if he displaces himself, offers the idea to follow, then I'm just going to walk from him. And what I want to do is let him discover me. I don't want to reach out and touch him. I just want him to figure out that he can reach out and kind of touch me, but I don't want to reach for him. When we start to move him around here, the purpose of this is not to teach him anything, but to just work with him until he starts to look for answers. There's an answer, there's a question right there. Is this what I can do? We want to see him start to find his way and figure out how he can feel more comfortable in this environment. So the last thing I want to do is push him hard and force him into making a decision. But if I can control his movements, just control his general energy, eventually he's going to get to the point that he's going to say, "What do you want?" And when I get that to happen, I'll just turn my back on him and walk away. Almost right there, there's a spot, so I'll just ignore him for a little bit. I want him to get the idea that the more that he just kind of pays attention to me, the more comfortable he'll feel. Now, one of the things that when we start to work with, particularly we'll take a stallion as an example, if I start to approach him and he starts to back up, a back up is a caution. So when I see a back up, I'll step forward, and when he makes a forward thing, he'll feel more relaxed. So I can use the backup portion of this a bit. because if he backs up and he feels insecure, then I give him the opportunity to feel secure by stepping forward. Then that kind of changes his feeling about what's being asked of him. Attaboy. Now, when I get close enough to him like I did a moment ago, there's a back up. I'll push this back up a little bit, see if I can get a stationary out of him right there. Now, you notice that his left front foot is slightly forward. When he finds the neutral position, that's when he'll start to relax. Right there, he's square. And so you want to pay attention to when he finds a square position, because at that point he will start to feel like he can stand here. But if he's off center on his position with his feet, he's going to feel like he's looking for a path to leave in. So right there, when he takes that stationary or that square position, I'll just step away from him a little bit, let him think about what he wants to do. There's a little licking and chewing and blinking of the eyes. So at these points of working with these horses, any horse, the caution that is always there is when we get close to these horses, we want to put our hands on them. And I think when horses work with each other until they've created a relationship, they don't reach out unless it's aggression. So if I just am like here and find myself in a position where he can explore me a little bit and then leave him, he'll start to get the idea that there's nothing being required of him. Attaboy. All the way through this, any of these processes, whether it's this kind of a lesson or anything else, from my personal feeling about this is I want him to find the answers to the different things that we're looking for, and basically what we're looking for is his confidence. Attaboy. And if he can find the answers, he's going to feel a lot more better, secure about himself than if I show him the answer every time I want him to find one. Okay, now we'll take him back out into the movement again. Right here he's asking a lot of questions. He doesn't know if he needs to leave or not. And if I take this opportunity, because I've got my hands up, that's going to benefit him if he decides to stand there. That's going to benefit him when it comes time for me to reach for the halter to bring up to his head. Attaboy. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and ask him to move out. Anybody watching this video is not familiar with the Mangalarga Marchador. They are from Brazil. They're a gaited horse. They've got a lateral and a diagonal gait. They're very versatile animals, capable of just about any discipline that somebody would want to put them in. Now we notice he's changing his pattern in here a little bit. If he keeps himself to the outside with his head, I'll keep his head outside a little bit until he starts looking in. There's an inside position. Now we'll start to change him. Now this lesson is not about controlling this horse. It's about learning, from my perspective, it's about learning more about the horse. I don't want to come in and try to dominate him and make him do anything. There's a search, okay. On any given horse, right, just like in a juncture just like this, I'll take a position to stand here sometimes for 10-15 minutes and not do anything but just stand here with the horse. I'll try to move here so the camera will pick me up. This camera is a Pixio camera. It's on a robot system, so I've got a sending unit here, and it'll follow me, but it obviously doesn't follow the horse unless I had it tied onto him. So here is just a place for me to look at the horse, see him yawning, blinking, licking his lips. The more he starts to leave his head in a lower position, the more I'm comfortable that he's comfortable. Attaboy. Now I'll ask him to leave again. Now these decisions that I'm asking for in terms of his energy are just my personal intuitions. There's not a formula about this that you have to do this or do that a certain period of time, but you want to get a feeling for how the horse is reasoning through the information that he's got, and we'd like to see that with any of these horses where they're able to start to reason through their environment and figure out how to work in their environment. If we just push him really hard and make him work the outside of this pen all the time, attaboy, he's going to worry more about me than he is about anything else. So at this point, we don't want him to take that worry. So he took a few steps forward and now he's standing. So from this distance, I'm going to start a circle around him. When he displaces his hindquarter, I'm going to stop right there. Pause for a moment, go the other direction. There's a displacement there. Pause for a moment, the other direction. Each time that I pause and change direction, I'm getting closer to the horse. Attaboy. Now all the way through this particular thing that I'm doing right at the moment, the only thing I stare at are the horse's feet. I don't look at his face or his eyes or anything else. I look at his feet, and that gives me the timing to see his decision being formulated by the way his muscles decide. If I look at his eyes, I won't see the preparation for a decision as much as I will if I look at his feet. Attaboy. Okay, now these backups obviously are insecurities when they back up. Okay, another stallion just showed up. This one that just showed up is the one that kind of runs this bunch right here. So when he shows up, there's usually a little bit of interest that pops up. Attaboy. As I mentioned before, if I'm approaching him and he backs up, he's showing an insecurity. He doesn't know what to do. But if I come forward and allow him to walk forward, that's going to cause him to actually feel better. Because a horse is, when they're backing up, they're cautious. When they're stepping forward, they have more confidence. So you want to take advantage of both of those decisions to cause him to be a little bit more confident with himself. So you take advantage of these backups without pushing him. So that's another place where we're staring at his feet. I'm not moving into him any faster than he's moving. And now we'll have him a moment. I'm going to take the advantage now. There's a little bit of squareness on the front foot. So we're going to walk around him and see if he wants to come along. Doesn't matter if he does. I'm not trying to teach him to follow me. I'm just looking for the point where he decides to. Attaboy. You notice back feet are not square, front feet are not square. I'll take a step back, see if he'll square himself. There's a square. Okay. Now that he's taken a square, I'm just going to walk away from him. Take any kind of pressure that he might be feeling off of him. Caution. Unsquare. Left forehand forward, right hind foot forward. So take a little pressure off him, see if he'll square. Attaboy. There's the square. All right. Good boy. Every time this horse takes a step forward, it's a big deal to him because he's showing a little bit more confidence that he can do this sort of thing and feel comfortable doing it. So it doesn't matter how many times the scenario repeats itself until the horse decides to make a decision. Another stallion just showed up. He's second in command that just now showed up. Attaboy. So this is part of the sequence of being able to halter and lead a horse, is to have him make a decision that you're important enough to hang with. Attaboy. Kind of a noisy bunch here. Good boy. Attaboy. Good boy. Now he took his position when he stopped to be square in the front. These are little things, but I think they're important to pay attention to. Now these 7 stallions are, if you watch them out with each other, they get in some teeth, hair, and eye conflicts. Fur is flying a lot of times, but they're pretty gentle horses. I mean, they're within their environment as far as their herd is concerned. They do whatever they do, but they're not aggressive to people. And this is part of what we're trying to accomplish here, is not to accomplish any of this by forcing anything on the horse to dominate him in any way. Attaboy. Okay, now the rest of the bunch just left. And now you're all by yourself, pumpkin. Okay, now we're going to start working a little bit on some confidence issues. If things like this are going on, we want them to be able to not be fearful about it. Anything like this is not designed, I would never use this to get a horse to go. boy. Okay, now he's decided to go because he feels uncomfortable. We're just going to keep the same thing going until he can make another decision to deal with it. A little bit more interested in the fact that his buddies are gone. Attaboy. Now we're going to start having him investigate this rope a little bit, because I want to be able to get this rope on his body in terms of touching it and so forth. So we'll just let him kind of check it out, and this is going to be instead of reaching out with my hand from this point forward, I'm going to be reaching out with this rope for him to make decisions. There's the backup, the insecurity. Good boy. Good boy. And before we get things accomplished on him, we may run out of battery on this camera, but you get to see this much of it anyway. Good boy. Attaboy. Good boy. Okay, we have just a little bit of introduction there. Now we'll take it off of him. Let him think about it. I really feel that anytime anything is introduced to a horse, they learn more when you give them some time away from the lesson than they do in the lesson. Attaboy. Attaboy. We approach this kind of a lesson as we do every lesson. That in this lesson, the goal is not to get this horse haltered. The goal is to get him mentally ready to be haltered. So the length of time that takes is based on him, not on the desire of the person. Because he's got a lot of things that he's trying to deal with in terms of figuring out what's being done with him. As I said, these horses are pasture bred and raised, so they have had no other than Rick, the owner, feeding and being around him. They're very comfortable with him, but not with things like they've never been haltered or anything like that, taught to lead. So they have some trepidation, I think, with what's going to happen to him, and that's This is really important, I think, when we work with every horse that is worked with in any environment, that we want to see how long or what it takes for a horse to reason through his environment. Every horse has a pathway of understanding, and that's going to be different for every horse. Some horses will just check in, and like this one lead stallion that was here, he was the first horse we worked on. He went through this thing like a textbook. And we were leading within an hour and 15 minutes. He was leading really well, backing up on command, lunging on command. So every one of them has a pathway of understanding, and that's what is a person's, a trainer or whoever, the job is to find the pathway. It's not to make the pathway. All we're doing in every lesson that is being done is we're presenting a information, and we want the horse to do anything he wants to do with that information. Eventually he's going to find a pathway that's going to fit with what is a normal process for teaching. And that's the goal here. Attaboy. So it takes a lot of these approaches and so forth, right in this little area of getting to this point with the horse. It's so tempting a lot of times to see if you can get the halter, the lead rope, or something on the horse. And when that becomes the person's goal, is to see if they can get it on there, you can almost bet that they're going to find themselves having to go back in the lesson quite a ways to get back up again. So it becomes pretty obvious when a horse is ready. Like you'd think, like if I was going to put a loop over this guy, right there I could throw the loop on him and catch him. But oh, that would be the worst thing for the mind of this horse and the progress that we're trying to make with him. Absolute worst thing. So when this thing is right for the horse, he'll find his way and not be worried about what's been added to him. And typically what I'll do with these horses, with any of them, is I'll have the lariat on them first and have them follow that lariat without any restraint on the horse. In other words, I'll never draw a choke on the horse and where he can't get away or anything like that. I want him to be able to go anywhere he wants to, but having the rope on him it's almost like having the person's hand on the horse while they're doing something. So the horse starts to feel like they're connected to you, and there becomes a very fine line between the horse responding to contact and responding to pressure. When they start to respond to pressure, they'll start to resist it. So adding too much pressure will actually cause the resistance that we're trying to avoid. Letting the horse work through contact is what we're trying to keep in that area where the horse can work with contact. But as soon as we start adding pressure in these early stages of their teaching, we do more harm, I think, to the progress of the horse's mind than we do anything else. So, and boy. Attaboy. Good boy. I think it's obvious, at least it should be obvious to us, that horses pay attention to the smallest detail of us, but we rarely pay attention to the smallest detail of the horse. And that's their job of survival, is to recognize the subtleties of everything, so they can identify the subtleties of everything that's going on around them or the things that are going on with them. Their ability to see very subtle movements and stuff like that is key to them making the progress they need to make. And if we don't pay that kind of attention to the smallest detail of the horse, we're missing a lot of opportunity, I think, to get these horses to feel comfortable in our process of trying to get communication to work for them. Atta boy. Good boy. Good boy. There we go. So unless the horse is in trouble for something to keep him safe, there'll never be any pressure on this line. There'll be just a slight contact. Any decision that comes forward, there'll be slack in the line. He's not had a rope on him before like this, so he's got a lot of things that are going on in his mind. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Okay, now there's contact. There's release. There's contact. There's release. So the release will come whether if he drops his head even. He doesn't have to move his feet, but if he drops his head, there'll be a release. So everything that, like I don't think I've ever seen a horse take off, go forward willingly with his head high in the air. Usually their head is up and they're going backwards, but if they're going to go forward willingly, they drop their head and move forward. Atta boy. I think it's most important for the horse to realize that we want to do something with him. We don't want to do something to him. Atta boy. Good boy. Good boy. See if this camera is doing what it's supposed to do. I hope it is. Atta boy. Good boy. That's a big breath. That's a big breath. Yeah. Good boy. Good boy. Yeah. That's better. That's better. Good boy. Attaboy. Good boy. Attaboy. The next step, I want to use the halter on him, but I only put the halter around his neck like the rope, like the lariat was. So I don't try to put the noseband on him. I want him to be able to be led from the halter around his neck rather than having the noseband on him. Does that smell like your buddies, huh? Does that smell like your buddies? Good boy. I'm going to release him a little bit, have him move around. And now I'm going to start to bother him a little bit and see how he can deal with it. Attaboy. Okay, he's walking over to me now. There, he just stopped. I know you can't see this on the camera. Good boy. Good boy. Attaboy. These horses' manes are just filled with cockleburs. Yeah, that's not any fun, is it? No. That's not any fun having those on you. Attaboy. That's a boy. Good boy. Good boy. Yeah, this approach is going to be a little bit more challenging because we want to be able to get things over his neck and so forth. And when he feels me reaching for him, he will not have experienced that yet. So we want to make sure that he's not too worried about that. Ah, the boy. Good boy. That's a boy. You're all right. Yeah. You're all right. Good boy. Good boy. Yeah. Good boy. Good boy. Yeah, so at this portion of it, I want to be able to get this halter really quite a ways up here into his throat latch, because I want this halter to be able to spin but not come off. So when I attach I use a different lariat that's got a buckle on it. When I attach that to the halter, if he spins around the other way, that thing's going to not get stuck on him. It'll just move around. It won't get nothing. It'll get tighter on him or anything like that. Now this lesson on this horse, because he is worried, because where he falls in the herd is, he's one of them that has managed a lot. I mean, he certainly has his scars on him. He's been fighting. But he is, the two dark bay stallions, one of them runs the grays, and then there's a roan and a kind of a sorrel looking one, and the other dark bay runs those. So I guess there's some prejudice here. One of them doesn't like grays and one of them does. So anyway, this guy is used to being pushed around, so he's, but he doesn't. He's not at the bottom of the pack, so he will offer his resistance. And a boy. Now, circling the horse is always at least what I use for getting the horse to follow. Walking straight away from them, they may or may not come with you, but if you've done some kind of work with them to get their attention on you, a circle will almost always draw them with you. Now, as his lessons evolve, we will be starting to add a little bit more in terms of pressure, so he has to make a decision with pressure. But we want to, in the early parts of this, we want to stay away from causing him to feel resistance, where he tries to resist any pressure that he feels. Make that contact. There's a little bit of, that's probably the most pressure I put on him right now. There's a decision, there's another decision. So he started to think about leaving, and then he came with. So one of the things that's important for anybody doing, well, it doesn't matter if it's a stallion or any horse, but when you pick up and find your resistance or find your contact, as you walk around the horse, you can maintain that contact by a certain amount of slide with in other words, if you hang on to this rope, you'll inevitably be adding excessive pressure. You can hold the rope with just enough grip that initial feeling of contact stays the same no matter where you go, like this right here. So I keep walking. And I can maintain that same feeling of contact and keep walking without increasing it. So, as I mentioned a moment ago, there becomes a point where there's nothing wrong with adding pressure, because the horse does need to learn how to discern how to deal with pressure and how to let that pressure remove so that pressure will disappear. And as we all know, they don't learn from pressure, they only learn when it disappears. That a boy. That a boy. Okay, now we'll just give him some flat time or idle time here and not do anything and let him kind of think about his environment. Okay, now we're going to go back into some confidence lessons. I'm going to start slapping my leg and see if I can get him to follow. Now at some point, if he takes off, if he gets to the point that he's bothered enough that he feels like he needs to leave, obviously I'm just going to let the line out so that he can go, and then work at bringing him back in. So when you're doing a lesson like this, building confidence, they have him feel like he can follow something that's typically a little threatening, which would be slapping a rope or twirling a rope or whatever. We want him to feel like he can think through this in kind of an environment and not be threatened by it. But if he does, it's not the handler's responsibility to choke him down and hang on to him so he can't get away. Atta boy. Good boy. I'm not sure this camera is working right. I hope it is. If it's not, at least you got the verbal end of it anyway. I'm by myself there's nobody here at the ranch right now, so this is one of the reasons for using this kind of a system. You can't always be able to have somebody running a camera. This system is really handy if you're riding, obviously, or if you're at the point where you can attach the sending device, which is just this wristwatch looking thing, onto the horse. So right here he's bothered, so I'll work with him until he stands still, and then I'll quit. Atta boy. Atta boy. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Now, in these stages, when it comes time to do anything like this, where you start to reach for his head and he doesn't want to give it to you, the last thing that you want to do is put pressure and try to bring it to you. So when he's distracted, distract him by moving. But if I go to put my hand up and he moves his head, I'll just keep moving my body until I'm in front of him. But the worst thing I can do to him is to pull his head and try to bring it back where I am. I want him to realize that he has nothing to worry about. Atta boy. Right here, when his head comes straight again, I'll stop scratching him right there. This is also a handy understanding too, when it's like if you're going to bridle a horse and they turn their head away from you, the natural instinct is to pull their head back. If they pull their head away from you, you just continue bridling and walk around with them so you're in front of them and they'll straighten their head up. And that would have been a decision that they made rather than a decision that you're trying to inflict on the horse. Okay. Kind of the concept that is used with this kind of stuff is if the horse is resisting like this and backing up, if this causes him to back up, this has to stay in place until he makes a decision. In other words, it causes him to stand still. So kind of looking at it like whatever causes a horse to get worried, that very thing that caused him to get worried has got to cause him to relax. So if they get worried about something and you stop what you're doing to try to relax the horse, they haven't gotten to the transition point of making a decision how to deal with that distraction, whatever it happens to be. So I think this is it's an easy way for the horse to develop confidence, is if we want to teach them how to be comfortable, they have to make a decision to stand still. There he goes. Oh boy. Good boy. Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Good boy. That's better. That's better. Lots of yawns. Lots of yawns. Now, a subtle thing that you can notice when you're working with them, when you're working with the horse and there's flies biting the horse, they are even leery about turning themselves away from you enough to get that fly off of them. But when you continue to work with them as you evolve in your lessons, and they start to get really confident with swinging their head to move a fly without worrying about you, then that says quite a bit. That's kind of a real positive thing, I think. You'll see these horses nipping at flies and stuff and but they'll almost be worried about moving their head that far away from you like that right there. He'd like to go for that fly, but he doesn't want to take me out of his vision either. If he can get comfortable enough to reach for that fly and not worry about me, then I know that we're making some good progress here. So even little things like flies can be a real important part of the lesson. Oh boy. Okay, now we're going to do some straightaway pressure. So I'm going to take the line, add pressure, and see if he can make a decision. Now there's not much pressure here, but there is pressure that he hasn't felt before. Right there, even though he's quiet and kind of looking around, looking at the mares out there in the pasture. But nothing is changing with the amount of contact that he has on this thing as far as his pressure is concerned. And at some point, he's going to make a decision to do something. Attaboy. There it is. Head went down, so he gets released, even before his feet move. Add the pressure again. There. And again. We have a lot of smoke today in the air. This area, they do a lot of pasture burning to get rid of the weeds and so forth. So all this area has got so much burning going on that the air is pretty thick with smoke. Atta boy. Good boy. Mm-hmm. Good boy. Good boy. Here comes your buddy. First teaching the horse to lead, not having the actual nose band on there, I think is an easier thing for them to work through. You're still working with contact release or pressure release, whatever you want to call it, and it's less confining to have it just there at around his throat latch than it is his whole head being restricted. Atta boy. Good boy. Right here we're doing a lot of handling with him and scratching and rubbing and so forth. And there's no reason for a horse to immediately, until he understands what human involvement is like, to identify that as feeling good, because his defenses are always going to be up. So just, working with him where he doesn't feel, he can make any decision he wants to. He's not confined to having to make a decision because of what's being done with him. But he can work with this until he decides, okay, I don't care if you do that. And he'll actually get to the point that he realizes that it feels good to have this kind of contact done with him. But like anything else, if you stay in one area too long, it doesn't work so well. Atta boy. But handling his muzzle and stuff like that is going to be very helpful for him to. You got his buddy over here that just showed up, to be able to have that nose band on him. Atta boy. Atta boy. Okay, we're going to start the backup. A lot of people are familiar with this. We're just motioning this rope. There's a decision. So if I see a recoil in his muscles, that's enough to quit before his feet don't even have to move. We're just going to motion this rope. And even though he's stationary, he's doing a lot of thinking. He doesn't know what this means. or how to deal with it. And boy. Good boy. And a boy. Good boy. Good boy. See if I can get lined up with the camera. We'll get this. Atta boy. Good boy. Atta boy. Good boy. That's better. That's better. Yes, you're doing good. You're doing good. You're a good boy. Atta boy. So I have no idea if that if the camera is still working or not. The light's on, but I have no idea if the batteries doesn't usually last too much longer than this. Atta boy. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Okay, we're just about finished with this segment of him. Now he's going to experience having the nose band on. Now, this is the first time he's had the nose band on, and everything is first time. The only thing I did with him the other day was work just for a short period of time on having the round pen experience, so you can make a decision to kind of hook up a little bit. Good boy. So what I'm doing now is obviously is desensitizing, but I want to be able to throw this rope from the halter over his neck and eventually get him to the point where I can throw this rope over his neck from the halter and not have him be worried about it. So just seeing things flying around his head will help this a little bit, we hope. Atta boy. Atta boy. Good boy. Good boy. Here comes your buddy. Here comes your buddy. There he comes. There he comes. That's better. That's better. Good boy. Okay, this is the point where we're just going to be done with him. My day is over with. I sure hope this comes out because he was a good student. Yes, sir, you were a good student. Hey, Urano. How are you? How are you? Atta boy. Comes the other guy, just showed up. They're not going to get you. They're not going to get you. No, they're not.